All the way back to our founders, the people of this country have understood that freedom was never, is never, and will never be free. Freedom has always had a cost. And on the morning of August 6, 2011, the cost of freedom knocked on our door. When we found out that our only son, firstborn child, Aaron, a U.S. Navy SEAL and member of SEAL Team 6, had lost his life in Afghanistan, rushing into battle to assist Rangers who were in a raid. That morning, it changed everything for us. I remember my daughter Tara is here with me. If you could just stand up or wave your hand, Tara. I remember that morning at 7:30, my phone rang, and it was my husband. He was working 3,500 miles away from home. And Aaron had been in the military for 9 years. He'd been a SEAL most of those years, as soon as the training was over. And we'd seen him leave on many deployments and come home from many deployments, had done hundreds of missions. And, we were used to this. It was just something normal. But this morning was really different. My husband called me at 7:30 and woke me up from sleep. And he said, "Karen, I have something to tell you, and I don't want to." And his voice was shaking, just quivery and really odd. And he said, "Karen, a helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan last night. And the more details they give about it, the more I feel like it could be Aaron's team involved in it." And so, my heart just kind of went into this panic mode because we'd never had a moment like that. In all 9 years, we'd never had a moment where we felt like Aaron could be in danger. I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Try to reach him on Skype, see if you can reach any of his friends." And so I started trying to do that. All of that was to no avail. Couldn't reach him, couldn't reach his friends. I found out later that I couldn't reach his friends because they already knew he was dead, and they couldn't tell me. Tara came to my house. She's married with a family of her own. Her father had called her and said, "Go be with your mother just in case." She came in with my two of my 6 grandchildren. We sat there together for maybe 30 more minutes before we finally found out that Aaron was in fact on the helicopter, and I'll never forget how it happened. Aaron was married, had 2 little babies, a son, Reagan, if that tells you anything about his politics, who was almost 2 years old, and a daughter, Chamberlain, who on that morning was 9 weeks old. And his wife, Kimberly, was staying with her parents up in Northern Virginia during this deployment. And we had spoken with her parents a couple times through the morning to talk about whether or not we should wake her up and see if she could reach Aaron. And on the 3rd time we called, only 1 hour had passed since my husband made that call. It was 8:30. And when I called this time, her father, Alan, picked up the phone. And I said, "Alan," he goes, "Karen, listen to me, it's bad." And I said, "Oh, I know," thinking that he meant the likelihood that it could be Aaron's team. And he said, "Karen, listen to me. Aaron was on the helicopter, and there were no survivors." And I don't know how to explain a moment like that, except that it feels like the life is just sucked out of your body. You cannot even fathom, your brain can't reconcile it. So I remember just screaming, "No, no, no, it couldn't be true." And I fell back in my chair, and Tara took the phone from me and finished the conversation with Alan. And I remember when she got off the phone, I said, "What did he say?" Thinking surely he said something different, like, they're still looking. They think he was on the chopper, but they're not. I just prayed for any word other than what he had just said. And all Tara said to me is, "You're going to be all right, Mom." And I remember thinking, that in that moment, I got to tell you something. The most important thing that you will ever know about my son Aaron is that he loved Christ. He had an exquisite love for Christ. He had given his life to Jesus at a very young age, and he'd lived a life of faith. And so we all knew where he was. We all knew that we'd be with him again one day because of our faith in Christ. But it didn't make it easy. And so our journey, it was hard, and it's taken us a lot of places. It's kind of been miraculous to me where God has taken all of us in this time. But before I go there, I just want to tell you about Aaron just a little bit, from the time he was 8 years old, because I think it's important for people to know the person behind this story and why he did what he did. From the time he was 8 years old, he'd tell anyone who would listen to him that one day he was going to be a Navy SEAL. And it was a ludicrous idea. I don't know. I didn't even know what a Navy SEAL was. A lot of you women may not know. It's the most elite fighting force the world has ever known. And it was ridiculous because he was a skinny, scrawny kid who was 6'4" tall by the time he was an adult, and he was nearly that tall by the time he was around 12. Have you seen those kids?
weighed like 90 pounds soaking wet. And his big thing always was trying to gain weight. If one day in my adult life somebody would say, "Why need you to gain some weight today?" I would be like, "I have died and gone to heaven." And just a story, fast forwarding real quick. When Aaron would deploy, I would stress eat. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you guys. Like my husband Billy would say, "Do you want me to go get some, do you want a piece of pie?" I'd like, "No, I want the whole pie. Give me the pie. Just back up." I stress ate all the time. And so we were on this journey throughout Aaron's life to help him gain weight. And so when he was deployed one time, he called from Afghanistan, and he was so excited. He said, "Mom, guess what?" And I said, "What?" Thinking, I didn't know what he was about to tell me. He said, "I'm up to 220 pounds. I'm like, "Yes, so am I. We will celebrate together when you get home." Woo! Anyway, that's how it was. But Aaron was the most unlikely person that he should have never been a Navy SEAL. And I'll tell you why. By the time he was in high school, he had filled out his frame a little bit and became a very good football player. Really, really good football player. And on the practice on Thursday before the first game of his senior season, he blew out the anterior cruciate ligament in his left knee. Now that was hard because it was a setback, but he had surgery, had a new ACL put in, had the knee cleaned up, everything repaired, and went on, and in 6 months he was running a 4.440 at 6'4" tall, which was a remarkable recovery. And he was just determined that as soon as he got out of school, he would become a Navy SEAL. He would join the Navy and become a SEAL. But unfortunately, just before school let out that year, he was playing a pickup game of basketball with some friends, and he blew his knee out again. Destroyed the anterior cruciate ligament again. Tore all the other ligaments and did a lot of cartilage damage and things like that to his knee. So we thought, okay, it was depressing and it was hard, but he'd done this once, we could do it again, right? And it would just be a little bit of setback. But unfortunately, the doctor came out 2 hours into the surgery and he said, "Mr. and Mrs. Vaughn, Aaron, it didn't go well. There's too much damage in Aaron's knee and I cannot fix it. There's nothing I can do to repair his knee this time." And he said these words. He said he will never be able to do anything physical again without the use of a special brace, and he'll spend the rest of his life somewhat handicapped. And so just at the point, when Aaron woke up from that anesthetic fog, he literally felt like his life was over. He had been created to live out this mission. It was buried in his heart. We often say that Aaron didn't become a warrior because he was a Navy SEAL. Aaron became a Navy SEAL because he was a warrior. This is who he was in his heart, but he'd been sidelined. And he couldn't understand it. And so all he knew to do was get a job. He just tried to reconcile himself to the fact that he would never be a Navy SEAL. And it was hard. So he got a job. They liked him so much where he worked that they put him all the way through college. And life was moving on, and he had adjusted, and he had laid down this dream. And then came the day that changed everything for everyone across this nation, and frankly, across all the nations, and that was September 11th, 2001. And we didn't know what was going on in Aaron's heart at that time, but we later learned what it was. It was not the 2 airplanes that struck the Twin Towers that caused Aaron to do what he did next. That's not what it was. As horrific as that was, and as horrible as it was for all of us to witness, as painful as it was, that's not what caused Aaron to do what he did next. It wasn't the plane that struck the Pentagon. Even though that was such a sickening, have y'all ever thought about what an intentional blow that was to hit the center of our nation's defense? To strike the Pentagon. It wasn't that. We found out later that what caused Aaron to do what he did was this. It was the 40 average citizens on board Flight 93. Dressed in blue jeans and ball caps, business suits, whatever. They stood up and took their place in history because it was their time to do it. And they thwarted what possibly would have been the most horrific blow on our nation that morning. 40 average people. Came home on his 21st birthday a few months later and said, "Mom and Dad, I joined the SEAL Challenge program. I leave for boot camp in November." And his father, being the encourager of the family, "Son, you'll never make it. What about your knee?" And Aaron said, "I've always known this is what I'm supposed to do. God's telling me to do it now, and I'm going to make it." BUDS class, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. BUDS class 248 started with 157 men and only 7 finished, and Aaron was one of them. Not only that, there's a wall in Coronado Island where they train SEALs. Across the top of it, it reads, "First time, every time." Holds the names of the few men in history who have completed every single evolution required of them to become a Navy SEAL the first time they tried. Guess whose name is on that wall? And I don't say that, and then he breezed right into SEAL Team 6, which is the tip of the tip of the tip of the spear in naval special warfare. And I don't say any of that to brag on Aaron, because he was the most humble human being you would ever meet in your life. He never once beat his chest and said, "Look what I did." Instead, he lived a life, absolutely lived a life, with hands thrown to the sky, saying, "God, I cannot believe you let me do this." We always knew there was only one plausible explanation for what Aaron became, and that was God. And so on August 6th, when Aaron died in the Tangi River Valley of Afghanistan, 7,000 miles away from all of us who loved him, we know that he took his last breath in the arms of the one who loved him more than any of us could have possibly loved him. And as I said, we know we'll be with him together again. But here's the thing. Why did he do it? And that's what I'm here today. That's why I'm here at this Mom's March for America. Why did he do it? Because he believed that a representative republic is the noblest form of government ever devised by man. And it has to be protected. And patriots throughout the ages have stood up and taken their place. Those 40 average citizens. They've taken their place in history, just like your beautiful husband. And he knew it was time to take his place. Aaron was the kid who always stood for the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I can tell you, if he had seen somebody trying to take a knee during it, he would have helped them to their feet. Because he knew what had been given. So here we are. Here we are at a crossroads, right? We've never seen anything like this. I don't know where Tina went, but we've never seen anything like the culture that we're experiencing right now, have we? We've never seen it. So are we going to be those 40 citizens who stand up and take their place in America's history? Are we going to answer the call when somebody shouts out it's time? Are we going to say let's roll? Are we going to cower in fear that it's too hard, or it's too overwhelming, or it's just too much and we can't make a difference? There aren't enough of us. Well, I'll tell you something. All I do now is travel the country and speak. That's all I do now. And write my book. But everywhere I go, I find rooms full of people just like us. We are not the minority. We are the majority. And we can make a difference. But all of us have, you know what, somebody that I'm very close to says this all the time. We can't all do everything, but we can all do one thing. The one thing we were uniquely created to do to keep America alive. And see, here's why it's so important to me. Because if we lose who we are as a nation, the fiber of who we are as a people, then it's just like Aaron never lived. Do you understand that? And not just Aaron, but 1.3 million American sons and daughters who have given their lives to give us the freedom to sit here today. I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to finish with a story. In the wake of Aaron's death, like I said, he left behind 2 little children. Our daughter Tara was really, really close to her brother. They were only 21 months apart, were best friends their whole life, shared the same friendships, and she kept asking God what she could do to honor his life. So she started an organization called Operation 300, which now is a gigantic not-for-profit. You should look it up, operation300.com. She hosts adventure camps for kids who have lost their dads in this war. And they come in and have a weekend of extreme fun. And I like to say that if they go home and their clothes are still able to be washed and fixed, then we didn't do our job at the camp. We pair them up with father-age male mentors who just come in. Instead, they don't take the place of their father, but they come in and they teach them what it's like to be around men, little girls and little boys who don't have the privilege of having a dad in their home anymore. And let me just tell you something. I know that there's a lot of people in this country who don't have a father in their home, but these kids are unique if you think about it, because their dad died for us. They died for us. And we got to give something back. So that's what Tara decided to do with her story of tragedy. That's her one thing. And it's not even the beginning of what she's going to do. But I'll finish with this. Ours is the only national anthem that ends with a question mark. It's been up to every generation throughout our nation's history to answer the question. It's now our turn. Thank you.